This is Tommy's Outdoors 118. Folks, the spring is coming and the summer gonna be here soon, sooner than you think. And this is the time where ticks becoming more active. Oh, well, ticks are active actually the whole year, but they're more active in the warm months, and also we are more active. We tend to go more hiking and fishing and spending times in the outdoors. And even some people are just sticking to the paths where they less exposed to ticks. But some of us, hunters and anglers, we are by very definition bushwhacking and going off the beaten track. And these are people who are especially exposed and vulnerable to tick-borne diseases and to tick bites. So it's been probably almost 2 years since we had an episode about ticks and protection, how to protect yourself from ticks. And so I thought that this is a great time to kind of do the refresher on this. And so today with us is the Tick Terminator, Brian Anderson. Brian dedicated his work to protect outdoors people, hunters and anglers, hikers, but also outdoors workers, farmers, anyone who, is at risk of getting a tick bite. So before I go any further with this introduction, I want to address one thing that some of you might ask. Since Brian is based in the US and majority of my listeners is based in Europe, you might wonder how relevant that everything that you're going to talk about in this podcast is for European listeners. And the answer is very relevant. So, in fact, there are two different species of ticks. In Europe, it's castor bean tick, Ixodes ricinus, and in the USA, black-legged tick, Ixodes scapularis, I think. For all intents purposes, that's essentially the same tick. They look the same, they behave the same. You can get Lyme disease, all the same Lyme disease from both of them. And even if you look at scientific papers, peer-reviewed scientific papers about ticks and tick-borne diseases, both of those ticks are essentially, like in one breath, people mentioning them in one breath. So it's, for all intents purposes, all the same tick. It looks the same, behaves the same, both in Europe and the USA. So everything that we say here in this podcast is relevant both for European listeners as well as American listeners. The podcast is really two parts. In part one, we talk about Lyme disease, how to identify Lyme disease, what to do if you have Lyme disease. And we also talk about ticks and tick biology and species of ticks and how they behave and, how their behavior might mean that you more or less prone to get a tick bite. In the second part of the podcast, we go really deep into protection against tick bites. And I obviously always encourage you to listen to the entire episode to the very end, but especially in this episode, because towards the very end are really some nuggets of information how to protect yourself from tick bites. It's a very timely episode, and anyone who spends time outdoors should listen to it, because we also explore a little bit why Lyme disease and tick bites are becoming such a big issue over the last 20, 30 years, why we haven't heard that much about it before. We dive into that subject as well. So I would also encourage you to go and visit Brian's website, thetickterminator.com. It is absolute mine of information about ticks, how to protect yourself from ticks, about Lyme disease, what to do when you get a Lyme disease, how to remove ticks, all this stuff. There's also a shop where you can buy products to protect yourself from ticks. I understand that my European listeners might have some problems in getting these items shipped from the US, but you can always find equivalents in Europe. But my US-based listeners, and I know there's like 20% of you out there, of all my listeners are from the US, you can just go to tickterminator.com and buy products of Brian's shop directly. So really encourage you to listen to this episode. A lot of knowledge, and I hope you will be safe from ticks and from Lyme disease. This is really no joke. So yeah, listen to that episode. And as always, before I let you go, if you want to support the podcast, please leave the rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Give me 5-star rating. You can write a review on Apple as well. That's very helpful. And if you want to help me personally, you can buy me a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/Tommy'sOutdoors. The link in the description of the show. Go in there, buy me a coffee. It's greatly appreciated. I'm editing those episodes for you very early in the morning or very late at night. So, coffee is helpful. So thanks in advance if you decide to support me that way. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without delaying that any further, Brian Anderson and the Tick Terminator. Brian Anderson, the Tick Terminator. Welcome to the show, sir.
Glad to be here, Tommy. I've been looking forward to this. That's for sure.
That's good. That's good. Listen, before we start, and we're gonna jump into the discussion about ticks, and we go into the thicket full of ticks. You're based in the U.S., right? In the eastern U.S.
Correct, Michigan actually. So it's kind of north central.
Michigan, yeah. Yep. So listen, since the about 2/3 of the audience of this podcast is based in Europe, English speaking Europe, Ireland, UK mainly. Tell us how relevant is what we're gonna talk today to European listeners. So how different are ticks between Europe and the United States? Are they similar? Are they different?
Well, there are some similarities, yeah. And I've been looking into that because obviously I'm from the States here, but looking in European and they have the problems there too. I mean, when you have 800 species worldwide, I mean, they're almost all over the place, and they're not going away anytime soon. But yeah, they definitely have them in Europe too. I mean, they're in the environments that are tick habitats. I mean, hey, guys are out walking, backpacking, camping, hunting, and ticks like areas where there's moisture. Okay, they're going to be more in grasslands, if you want to say. They're never going to be out in the middle of a pavement. Okay, they bothers them, so they're going to be in areas like that. And I tell people, I mean, one way to avoid them is to stay on trails, stay on paths. When you're walking in the grass, that's when they can get you.
I was looking into that as well, and it seems like there are the biology of ticks is pretty similar all over the world. So I gotta say that products for tick protection, when I'm go out hunting or hiking, I was buying from the US. So Permethrin and all that, because I couldn't get them where I live. Listen, okay, we get into all that. First things first, Brian, how did that start that you ended up professionally protecting people from ticks, fighting ticks, that you are a professional tick terminator? How did that start?
Well, you got to be a little strange. You got to be a little weird. You got to have kind of a unique fascination with these little blood-sucking varmints that we all hate, And I have since I was a little kid. I remember visiting my grandparents when I was a kid, even, And at that time, we didn't have them where I lived at that time. But we would go to visit my grandparents by 500 miles. They were in a very wooded area, very rural area in the woods. And they had ticks there. And to me, being a little kid, it was kind of fascinating, actually, because this ticks are so secretive, okay? You can't even hardly feel them when they're crawling on your skin, all right? And they would get stuck to us. And at night, when I was a little kid, like 5, 6 years old, we would play in the woods and we'd get ticks, and my mom would pick them off us at night. And I thought it was just kind of humorous, you know what I mean? it was funny, because a mosquito you can tell when it's crawling on you, and you can feel it when they bite you, but a tick you don't. So Mama would do a tick check, which is very important to do, doing tick checks every day when you're in tick environments. So that's kind of where it started when I was a kid. It eventually, progressed even, a little more a number of years ago. My wife, who was just deathly afraid of them, well, like we all are, but she was fanatically afraid of them. And I was trying to learn more about them. Uh, I'd had different experiences over the years with them, and I was trying to learn how can I keep these off from us? How can I keep them ticks from biting us? And I was starting to learn a little more about them. I did a lot of research online. I spent hundreds of hours, and then I was hearing and more about Lyme disease. I have a buddy who almost died from Lyme disease, which is the worst tick-borne disease that you can probably get. And so then I bumped into some really unique repellents in part of my research, and I can get into that too. But it's very keeping them off you is the most important thing because I was thinking I didn't want to bring them home. That hey, if you can keep them off so you don't bring them home, that's the best thing. And there's some repellents that actually help you do that.
Right, right. So it was like a fascination from the early days that you turned into a business.
Yeah, and back in the days, we never had problem with Lyme disease. Lyme disease is fairly new to being a problem. I mean, it's been around for quite some time, but nowadays we've seen more of issues with it. When I was a little kid, long time ago, the ticks were just a nuisance, but now they're a nuisance with a potential problem of having real issues with them.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because that's one of the things that I observed, and even I think like episode 55, I already recorded episode like probably 3 years at this time about ticks, and that was something that um I also was wondering back then, and I still wondering like, and now you said it. Like back in the days, you didn't hear about it, right? If the my parents and my grandparents who were farmers, if you told them that the tick is like a problem, they would laugh at you. That wasn't it wasn't a thing. So I just wonder like whether just people were not aware, and information was not spreading that easily, and people didn't know. They thought like someone got lazy and that's it, or is it something in the environment, or is it something in us, like a general state of health of humans deteriorated, where the Lyme disease can get hold easier? What's your take on this?
Well, partly is that ticks have expanded; they've grown a lot more in their population in as the decades have been progressing. So there may not have been as many back then. So the more you have, the more problems you're going to have with them. And then maybe they're see ticks. Maybe I should get into lifestyle, even a life cycle of them. But ticks get their tick-borne diseases from a host. Okay, and maybe there's more of those hosts. In the United States, they get them from hosts like a white-footed mouse. Okay, and in Europe, they also get them from mice, but they get them from, they say, from blackbirds and pheasants and things like that. Where they're not born with the disease, they get it from their first host, and then they carry it for the rest of their life. So maybe those hosts are even more plentiful now too. Some people blame it on global warming that ticks are been able to thrive even more.
Yeah, I heard that too, that the winters are not that harsh. I live in Ireland for many many years, but I originally come from Poland, and like we used to have like a pretty harsh, I wouldn't classify that as harsh, but -10 Celsius was like a regular thing in the winter, and this is not something that is happening anymore. And again, there's more ticks, so some people are blaming that on, like you said, warming of the climate, lack of cold winters, but also maybe there's more hosts. And this is an interesting point because many people are blaming deer, right? And I know that in the United States there's more white-tailed deer now than it ever was. And for example, in Ireland, And I believe in the UK as well. There's also a lot of deer, mainly because they don't have any natural predators, and there's only hunters control them. So people often say, "Oh, there's so many deer and sheep and all that," but that's not really. They're Can you explain that? Why not deer are not necessarily the ones to blame for more ticks?
Well, they don't really start off on deer. They usually end their life on the deer. Actually, is what happens because. Well, let me get into the life cycle
Yeah,
because
yeah, sure.
the way it works for ticks is a female ticks gives birth to anywhere between 1,000 to 5,000 little eggs at a time. It takes her several days to do that, and in the U.S. it's done probably in the summertime. Okay, after a couple of weeks, they hatch out of those eggs, and then they start looking like a newborn baby. Now they're looking for something to eat, and since they're right on the ground, the forest floor, the closest thing to them is something that's going to be right on the ground. I mean, it's going to be like a little mouse, or maybe some bird that's pecking down there, but it's usually a little mouse. And they get on that mouse, they start sucking the blood out of it, and the germs from that mouse or from their first host is what gives them any kind of tick-borne disease. So, because ticks only eat one thing, and that's blood. That's it. So what happens is that after they eat that blood, for several days, they get off, and then they molt into their next series, which is going to be the NIF series, the next spring. Because I know you guys have the winters similar to ours. Uh, but anyways, they molt into that. They come out the next spring as about the size of a poppy seed, which is very very tiny. And had they gotten in some kind of tick-borne disease the summer before when they were just first born, they're going to have it for the rest of their life. So a lot of times those little tiny ticks, the size of poppy seeds, they're just as lethal as a full-grown adult.
They
Problem is,
called nymph, are they?
they're called a nip tick. Yeah,
Niptic. Okay, okay. And tell me, because there's interesting thing that they don't born carrying any of the pathogens of Lyme disease, even if they're being born from the female that is already have a bacteria that causes Lyme disease. Is that correct?
correct. Yeah, they are not born with any diseases. They are disease-free when they are born.
Okay. All right. So let's continue on the life cycle. So they're born disease free, and ideally they continue that way. And if they're gonna get you at whatever stage and they're disease free, you're good to go. You just remove the tick and you move on. But that not always happens. So already at that stage that you're discussing right now, that they're those niptics or those nymphs, they already might be um, carrying the disease.
Correct. Yeah. And the problem with them at that stage is they're, like I say, the size of a poppy seed. They are so small you can hardly even see them. You could be out hiking and backpacking and get one on your shoelace, and you wouldn't even hardly see it. So that's why I tell people protection is so important. They say that a real big majority of people who get tick-borne diseases get them from that little tiny tick that they didn't even know they got bit. So, anyways, that tick bites something. It could be us. It could be some little varmint. Little small animals, and they suck the blood out for a couple of days. Then they drop off. Then they molt into the next series that fall, that winter. Come out the next spring as an adult, and then as an adult they look for something else. Could be us. Could be some little varmint. Then too, maybe a deer. And let's say they get on the deer, and then the ticks mate, the male and the female, and then they ride the deer out for the rest of the season, the winter, and come out in the spring. And then the male gets off and he dies. The female gets off, and I tell people, man, if I gave birth to 1,000, 5,000, it'd kill me too. So she dies after she gives birth. So the typical life cycle of a tick is about 2 to 3 years, and those are the hard body ticks. I'm not going to get into soft body ticks. That's a whole other story. But typically, it's a couple years, and they go from the egg, to the larva, to the nymph, to the adult, and that's their typical life cycle. And they only eat basically one time a year, and it's just blood, from some kind of mammal, like us, or some kind of little animal in the woods, or sometimes even birds on occasion.
Okay, okay. And you quickly mentioned the soft bodied ticks. Are they the problem? Are they just not the problem? Like, what's the difference? Because we're talking about these hard-bodied ticks, and there's a few species in the U.S. and there's a few species in Ireland. I think that the castor bean tick is the main one that we deal with in Ireland, which is pretty much the same as black-legged tick in the U.S. So these are hard-bodied ticks.
Correct. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because the castor bean tick, or the sheep tick, or something called a deer tick, also they look just like ours. They have that same look about it. Because when I saw a picture of that, I thought, oh my gosh, it looked just like ours. Our black-legged tick, or we call it deer tick, and then you call a western black-legged tick, which is western part of the country in California, in the Pacific coast, and the ones on the Atlantic coast are the deer tick, and they look just like your castor bean tick. Pictures of them.
Yeah, exactly. And they're both on the both sides of the Atlantic. They're being called deer tick sometimes, like a common name. It sometimes makes me think that like in scientists, you have these lumpers and splitters, and some of them are tend to say like, oh yeah, that's actually the same animal, and they're like, no, 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 there's like a one little tiny thing different, so they're different species, but for all intents purposes we can treat them as the same thing. So these are all hard-bodied ticks. What's the deal with the other ones, with the soft-bodied ticks?
The soft-bodied ticks are more apt to be in warmer climates, much warmer climates, and they say that a lot of them in warmer climates, let's say in our area, let's say Arizona, if you're familiar with that, it's a very warm climate in the United States. And they tell, or Colorado, in some spots of Colorado, the very mountainous, the Rocky Mountains there, the soft-bodied ticks can be there, and they may be in let's say somebody's hiking out there, and they stop at an old trapper shack that's been around for 100 years, and they figured, hey, that's a good place. I'm gonna just throw my sleeping bag in here. Well, what happens is the soft-bodied ticks nest in little varmint nests. Okay, let's say like maybe woodchucks or something like that, smaller animals, and they will nest in there. And at night, if say somebody's sleeping in there, they can sense that. They will come down from the nest and go and feed on these people in their sleep, and they'll just eat on them for about, they'll suck the blood out of them for about maybe half an hour, and then they'll go back up to their nest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's extremely different than the regular hard-body ticks like we have in most of the United States, and you have in Ireland. There, the castor bean tick is this hard-body tick. So they usually feast, or they usually eat on somebody for several days at a time if they can. Not like a half hour like the soft-body ticks.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. And are the soft-bodied ticks as problematic in terms of carrying the pathogens, Lyme disease, and so on, as the hard-bodied ticks?
They don't carry the Lyme disease, no.
Oh, okay.
About the only ones that really get the reputation for carrying Lyme disease is your castor bean tick or our black-legged tick, which all look the same,
Yeah.
It was really funny when I saw that here recently, that I looked that up for your area. I'm thinking, man, it looks just like our tick, And it reminded me of something also, that years ago, our world was a lot less. We didn't travel like we do nowadays. So I can't think of the word there, but we travel a lot more now than we did even 50 years ago, around the world. And we're very movable, portable people. And that we're bringing more things too. So that could be part of the reason for the expansion of ticks in too.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But that's interesting thing that you said, that the soft-bodied ticks are not carrying Lyme disease. So that means that they're not a problem. Even if they're come down from the nest and feed on you and then go back, like, who cares?
They could still give you a little, like a fever and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, almost any tick can give you something. Not all of them have Lyme, of course, like I was saying, but there's different diseases out there. In the States, we have babesiosis or leishmaniasis, which I think you have it there in the European countries. So yeah, there's and you never know for sure. I tell people, If they get bit, well, maybe we'll talk about that more later. But yeah,
Yeah,
just
go ahead, go ahead. Like
I I actually I don't know if you can see this very good, but can you see this tick?
yeah, yeah. It's a big tick. Yeah,
It's a big stuffed tick, okay? And I tell people the way you take a tick off is very important too. You don't really want to grab it by the body like this. You want to grab it way down at the base here and pull it up, because if you grab it by the body and pull it up, it's more apt to puke the bad stuff in you, which
yeah,
you want. And the sooner you get a tick off, the better also. But when you take tick off, pull it straight up like that, and then watch that tick bite too. If it reacts really bad, if you have a bullseye rash, that's an indication that you're going to have real problems. If it really comes infected, if you feel achy joints, flu-like symptoms that are similar to COVID, I'm sure you guys are all aware of that too. COVID-19, yes. I'll be glad when that's over. But anyways,
I bet.
with tick bites, as COVID is going to be a respiratory issues with you, where tick-borne or tick bites do not give any respiratory problems. So you still may have achy joints, flu-like symptoms, feeling kind of crappy, but you're not going to have the respiratory. So that's the difference in those symptoms.
Yeah, for sure.
Seeing a physician and telling them that you got bit by a tick, and in the States here, we give them antibiotics, and I would assume they would do that there too. It's all about early treatment and early detection of them. Doing checks and finding that stuff out. And if you have a bad reaction, do not put that off. That is so critical to take care of that right away, because tick-borne diseases never get better in somebody; they only progressively get worse.
Yeah, yeah. So since you mentioned removing ticks and all that, I have a question. So number one, what's the deal with those nymphs or niptic, like you said, those tiny little buggers? Because we all know, like, okay, you do checks, you ideally that's somebody else who does the check, because you probably are unable to check yourself in all the nooks and crannies, let's say, especially that they like like a dark moist areas. But then if they're so small, like what are the chances of you actually seeing the one? And then if you happen to spot the little tiny that is attached to your skin, like how on earth are you gonna remove that one? Because even if you have those forceps or any other tools that we all familiar with for removing ticks, like they're like bigger than the whole damn nymph. So how do you what do you do with in that cases?
You do the best you can, because they're so. That's all you can do. Just do the best you can and kind of watch that bite area, and you may never have a problem with it, but you might. So it's all doing the best you can. I guess is the best way I can.
Have you seen these tools that is like a little pump that you're putting on the skin, like a little cylinder, and then you pumping, and it kind of creates like a, not a vacuum obviously, but very low pressure that it meant to like pull out the tick. Have you used those? Have you seen these? Are there any good?
Used those before. I tell people that probably the number one, the best thing that you can use is, we call them tweezers. You probably call them forceps, tiny little things like that.
Mm.
And you want to get those and grab it right at the very base. Okay, it's the best way. So it depends on the size of the tick then too. If it's really small, you just grab whatever you can. Like you were saying. A thing called a tick key, but that's a little different. But the forceps, as you call them, or we call them tweezers, is probably the best thing.
Okay, okay. Those keys is like, it looks like a little pry bar almost, right? And with a notch, and then you kind of try to
No,
remove it. No.
you grasp them like this. You would have his two little
Oh, with the tweezers.
tweezers. Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was asking about these tick keys or whatever, because there's like a ton of tools, but I'm getting from what you're saying, like, don't bother with any, the next best thing. Let's just use tweezers, and that's a tool for
right.
the job.
Something else you want to keep in mind too when you're taking a tick off is I've seen those things that you're talking about where they kind of spin around the tick.
Yeah.
You Here's the thing: you don't want to you don't want to tick off a tick. You don't want to make that tick mad in the process of taking him off, or usually a her, I should say, a female, because when you do that, they're going to be more apt to puke the bad stuff in you because they're still connected to you at that point. So you want to kind of be gentle with them as best you can to take them off. And the sooner you get them off, the better also. That's why it's so important to do daily tick checks because if they say if you get them off within 24 hours, if they're on you for 24 hours or more, you're definitely more apt to get a problem with them. But if you're off that day, you're a lot less likely to get a problem.
Hmm.
Make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
the better.
Yeah. And I think there's another thing that the ticks, the way they breathe, the I don't know how do you call it, the organs that they breathe are actually on the top of the tick, on the back of it, if you like. So that's why you shouldn't do any stupid things like putting gel on them or putting like gasoline on them or anything like that, because what is happening is what you just said, that tick actually starts to choke, and then it essentially pukes the stuff into it, right? Into you.
Yeah. Like I say, be gentle to them when you take them off. And some people even save them to send them in for testing.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Right. True.
You can have that in Europe there too. We have numerous places here in the States where they can send them in for testing if they need to, if they have a really bad reaction. Uh, but it's all about doing it the sooner the better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find
And
something.
yeah, and you mentioned the bullseye rush. Is that true that only I read somewhere there's only 20% of ticks, only in 20% of bullseye rush cases you actually will get the Lyme disease, meaning you can get a Lyme disease even if you don't have a bullseye rush.
Correct. It's not. I mean, if you have a bullseye rash, that's more than likely it's going to be a Lyme disease. But you could have it without a bullseye rash. That's what you mean, right? Only about, and in the states here, they say anywhere between 20 to 40% actually have that bullseye. So that's not, you can't look just for that only, because that's not in every single one of the cases. So that's part of the problem with ticks is you have so many variations of people their reactions are so different. My little niece, who was like 3 years old or 4 years old, she had a bunch of little circles all over her body. Her mom noticed that, and that was her telltale sign. There was probably something really wrong. And she had Lyme, but she had to take care of right away. So some people don't have any of that. Some people have it, but yeah, it's a real variety of reactions that people have.
Right. Is it possible that someone will get a bullseye rash but doesn't get a Lyme disease, or is it like when you have a bullseye rash that's 100% you got a Lyme disease?
I talked to one guy, I could hardly believe it, just this past summer, that said that. He said, man, I got bit by a tick a couple of years ago, had a bullseye rash, and I have had no problem since. I said, count your blessings, buddy. You are lucky. I've never even heard of that before. So that's extremely unusual, very unusual. I could hardly believe it. I wasn't calling him a liar, but I'm thinking, I've heard all kinds of different things in my position.
Yeah, gotcha. So in 99.9% cases, if you got a bullseye rash, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and have it taken care of right away. Most of the doctors here in the States use an antibiotic called doxycycline. Is that a European name for you guys too?
Yeah, probably. There's quite an overlap, but I'm not sure 100%.
That's
But it's an antibiotic treatment, so I would imagine it's the same antibiotic since the pathogens and the bacteria is the same. So
yeah.
yeah.
So I mean,
And listen and tell me, is it true that it takes 24 hours for tick to give you Lyme disease? So as long as you remove the tick before 24 hours is up, then you probably good to go.
more likely, I was mentioning that a few minutes ago that they say a kind of a 24-hour period is but nothing is ever set in stone, for sure. But so that's why I tell people the longer it is on you, the more apt they are to give you something bad. So the quicker you get them off, again, the less likely you are. So, but a lot of studies have said something about a 24-hour period. Yeah, so you're right. You probably read that, and I've seen that in a lot of cases.
Okay, okay. And listen, we know, roughly painted the picture right now. We have these hard body ticks that attach you, and all that's happening. So we're talking about now a Lyme disease, and maybe also other nasty stuff that I can give you. Um, how would you? And I'm curious about how it is in the United States, because I know how it is in Ireland, for example. How would you describe or assess the awareness of the medical personnel of Lyme disease, and how to deal with that? Because I remember, even from the previous episode where we talked about ticks, and from my own experience, when I showed up at my doctor one day and said, like, well, hey, I'm feeling really bad, and that was a couple of years ago. I felt really bad, and I thought I have a Lyme disease, because that was like in a height of the hunting season, and I was going through the bushes and all that, and I didn't know what is going on, and I felt like totally ignored. It was like, no, you don't have Lyme. Did you have a bullseye rash? No. Oh no, you don't have a Lyme disease. And I was completely, I got the leaflet from the HSE, which is like Irish, medical service. And there was like, oh, only if you're like in a certain part of country, you get like so. And then I was talking to this lady in from the organization TikTok Ireland, which is like NGO that raises the awareness of tick bites, and she said, like, yeah, there's a huge problem that the medical specialists and even nurses and doctors there have very limited knowledge of what's going on with ticks. Like, how does it look like in the US? Are medical personnel more aware of the stuff, or does people need to be kind of on their toes as well when it comes to that?
I'll say this: they're getting better. They're getting better than what they have been over the decades because the problems have been more prevalent now, and they're seeing more people. I mean, in the United States, there's anywhere between 300,000 to 400,000 new Lyme cases every year. That's what our CDC says. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, to put that in perspective, that's 1.5 times the number of women diagnosed with breast cancer, and 6 times the number of people diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. So Lyme disease is way more than those, and those are very, I hate to say, popular, diseases. So Lyme disease is really way up there as far as a problem. So they have got some more notoriety, and so doctors are more familiar with it. But I have heard people like what you're talking about there too, and if you got bit, I don't know, did you know you got bit at that time when you saw the
No, I
doctor?
did not. Like, I did not, because if I knew, I would actually deal with that differently. But I was just feeling like a strangely weak. I just didn't felt right. And of all the things, I ended up flying to Poland when I got that, like, a genetic tests from Germany. So you couldn't get them in Ireland. And I know that in Poland we could get like the German test that they're looking for the pieces, essentially, of the tick, or this bacteria DNA in your blood, and that way they're detecting Lyme disease. We can talk about that as well, because this is not that easy to detect Lyme disease, right?
Especially as you say in the beginning. Let's say you got bit today, and you went to a doctor next week even, and they did a test on you to try to see if you had Lyme. It's really, really hard, especially in the States or any place, to find a positive test result because it's so new in your system that it hasn't got all over the place to be able to come out as a positive test. So that's a real problem because It only comes out positive if you're lucky. The testing is hit and miss anyways. And let's say 6 months later, but then it's too late because then it's really into your body, and then it's really hard to get rid of. So the testing in the beginning is really tough to get anything positive out of it. So another thing that's happening here in the United States is there's more doctors that say when somebody comes in, if they know they got bit by a tick, they don't. A lot of them don't even do a test because it wouldn't be positive anyways. They just put them on doxycycline just to be safe, and then they get rid of it. But in your case, there that was a little different there, where you kind of felt crappy and
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. To this point, I don't know what it was. It just went away after a while, and all the tests came back negative. Those fancy DNA genetic tests, they came negative as well. So I don't know. I like this antibiotic that you say. Now I think that's that's the same name we have here. So listen, man. So what to do really if you're because this is like a crappy situation, right? You potentially have this um, potentially life changing disease, and you can't test for it. You don't know whether you have it or not. Um, you might have a problem in getting on the antibiotic treatment as well, because what I heard is like people are actually begging doctors, so they put them on the antibiotics, and some doctors are reluctant to do that. On the other hand, antibiotics are not good for you anyway, so you also don't want to get on the antibiotic every single time you get bit by a tick. So that's a hard nut to crack. Like what you recommend? What's your take on this?
what happens in a lot of cases is in the United States, let's say somebody's going to a doctor and they're not convinced that it's Lyme disease or much of a tick bite. They're not much of a problem with it. They sometimes people will go to what we call here is like a holistic doctor.
Hmm.
It's a little different than an MD. They do things a little more homeopathic. I don't know if is that a term that you would use.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and they do things a little different. Uh, and a lot of times that will help somebody too. The big thing, and I'm not a Lyme expert here. Okay? I'm more of a tick prevention guy.
Sure.
That's my main focus here. But the big thing that those doctors will do is really help their immune system. So that your body fight it off in different ways, maybe through supplementations, food supplements. They may put them on antibiotics for a little bit too, certain kinds. I've even heard of people using some acupuncture. Uh, so numerous different ways that people can do it, and it varies from person to person even too. They'll react differently to different treatments.
Yeah.
So sometimes if somebody has a bad case of Lyme, going to that different type of doctor other than your regular medical doctor is sometimes a good route to consider.
Yeah, it does. And you said it, and I appreciated that you said that you're not an expert on Lyme disease. I heard that even like Lyme disease is like it's really like an umbrella term for many different diseases. That's one thing I heard. Then the other thing I heard is like no, actually not, but the body reacts differently.
Lyme disease, and they actually one of the nicknames for Lyme disease is they call it the great imitator because of the symptoms. To a doctor, it could look like multiple sclerosis or fibromyalgia or different things like that because of the way it reacts. And I mean, people have had vision troubles with their eyes. They get brain fog sometimes. Where just like you're in a fog, along with the achy joints and the flu-like symptoms, and so it has numerous different symptoms that varies from person to person. That's why it's so hard to pin it down. You're actually lucky if you knew you got bit. You saw the tick and you saw the reaction to it. Count your blessings, because otherwise you get bit by those tiny little ticks and you didn't even know it, and you have these actions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I heard that too. I think it was even in that previous episode in 55, exactly the same thing. Like if you, it's kind of lucky that you knew that you were bit, because now you can actually react other than you didn't even know, and you're 6 months deep and you're chasing some strange things about it. And this is why I got so worked up when I felt like bad, because I said, man, I hope it's not Lyme disease. And you mentioned another interesting thing, man, that the uh, general immune response, and how healthy and how good your immune system is, can play a huge role. Because another thing I heard is that some people can easily fend off a Lyme disease when they get bit once, and their immune system kind of, because that bacteria doesn't go away, it kind of lives in your system, but your immune system can suppress it and kind of live with it. And then 2 years later you get bit second time, and now it's too much, and now it kind of comes back with a vengeance. That's what I heard. I don't know if that's something that you heard as well.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely heard that same thing there too. Yeah.
I'm just wondering now that whether this um spread of Lyme disease, or like like we mentioned on top of the show, that the Lyme disease seems to be becoming more of a problem than it used to be. Whether this is related that our bodies, we are just less healthy than our parents and our grandparents were, right? They were working hard, eating like not processed foods, and life was tougher, but maybe the overall health, at least at the time when we were younger, was better. While now our immune system takes a nose dive, and that's why it might be a part of a problem, right?
I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I mean, because I know that our foods nowadays, I mean, affect everything else. I never thought of it with the Lyme like that, but yeah, and you could be onto something there too. I mean that, I mean, our immune system is so huge, and maybe it is less active or not as good as it could have been. Had we been eating straight foods. We eat so many processed foods nowadays all over the world that could be part in it.
Sure. Listen, man. So we already scared our listeners about ticks. So now it's your time to shine. Tell me and tell us, how to protect yourself from the ticks, because obviously the best way is to not get bit in the first place.
I tell people, you don't want to get bit by a tick, never leave your house. Never.
That's not what I expected.
I know, but that's the case. You want to be for sure. Yeah, live in a plastic bubble. Get out, never enjoy nature. But anyways, we do. So I tell people it's all about protecting ourselves. Prevention is so important. Uh, and I tell people, what I use myself, and what uh, I have a lot of customers that use. It's a product called Permethrin,
Yes.
and you've heard of that before, right?
Oh, that's the one I was buying on eBay from the US, because I couldn't get it here in Ireland.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, anyways, yeah, that is the best stuff. That's the go-to product. There's nothing better than Permethrin, unless you stay outside your house.
Right.
Permethrin is really cool because it was developed in the '70s, and it was made by for 4 different applications. You have basically 4 applications for Permethrin. Farmers use a special blend of it to put on their crops to keep bugs off. They have another blend of it that they put on cattle to keep bugs off, livestock. There's another blend of it that doctors use to keep scabies and lice off of people, or if they have those problems. And then the fourth way is that they put it on your clothes. You spray it on your clothes, your gear, shoes, socks. You don't put it on underpants, underneath your clothes, but your outer clothes, and like I say, a ball cap, a hat. And the way Permethrin works is it's called a contact repellent. Okay. Now you probably are familiar with mosquito sprays that have DEET in them.
Mm-hmm.
You familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. DEET. The way DEET works is when you spray that on, the smell, the aroma, the scent that gives off to a mosquito, their little antennas notice that stuff, and it tells the mosquito that there's no blood there. So then they fly off.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
So they fly away when they smell it.
And
Now,
they saying that DEET also is supposed to work on ticks. That's what I heard.
it does, but it's the second best thing to permethrin. Permethrin is the best, okay? But yeah, DEET will work on ticks. There's other things that'll work too, to a certain extent, but there's nothing better than permethrin. Permethrin is sprayed on the clothes, and the cool thing about it is that the little molecules in it sticks to the fabrics, okay? And then you let it dry, a couple hours or overnight for sure. Maybe you've already used it, and it's called a contact repellent. So a tick is crawling up somebody's pants leg, and every step they take is driving their nervous system crazy. It drives them nuts. They can hardly stand it. And a lot of times, I've even watched them fall off my pants one time. I thought, that's really cool, It probably fell off and then it died. So every step they take is driving them crazy. So if you have a tick that crawled up to your shoulder here, I mean, it crawled up there. It didn't fall out of trees. They don't fly. They don't jump. They are crawlers. Okay, so that's how that works. They say if a tick is on a permethrin treated apparel for about a minute, it's eventually going to kill it. It may take it 5-10 minutes to kill it, but they can't take all that exposure to permethrin for very long. So it works really cool. So that's why I like it. And the cool thing about it is that it sticks to the clothes, and it even goes through the laundry several times too.
I heard that. Is that right? How many times you can put the clothes in the laundry before you need to reapply the permethrin?
Absolutely, yeah. That's I call it vitamin P for your clothes, just to be fun, Vitamin P for your clothes. So, anyways, I mean, I work with a product, and I can't sell it to the UK. I don't know how to do that. I'm just for the United States here. But most of the permethrin that you get on the market, like whatever you got there, is good for 6 weeks on your clothes, or 6 launderings, 6 going through the washing machine.
Okay.
That's the normal standard out there. I have a product that I work with. We have the only one that actually you decide how long it's going to last. Okay, it's a concentrate that you pour in a bottle and you mix it. All right, so you can mix it to last for 3 weeks and 3 washings, or 6 weeks, 9 weeks, 12 weeks, up to 24 weeks, up to 6 months if you wanted to. Backpackers and outdoor people like that like it to last for several months, so they don't have to keep reapplying every day. So that's the cool thing about it, is that it can go through the laundry and you don't have to keep reapplying it until the month or whatever you figured that you treated it or set it for. So it's really cool. I like that part about it.
Yeah, I mean that this is kind of in line what I do, and permethrin. Like I think it was also used in military applications.
Absolutely, British and U.S. all military clothes are treated with permethrin.
Right.
And it's even longer then, because they infuse it right into the fabrics in a special way, because they're trying to keep our military people to keep us safe. They're trying to keep them as safe as they can too, because a lot of times people, when they're off in foreign lands, they get bit by insects, and sometimes they're not ready for battle then because they got bit. So they have that infused in their uniforms.
Oh, that's interesting. One thing about permethrin that I think is worth mentioning, that it's not toxic for humans, for dogs or like livestock, but it is for cats. So people who have cats, just right.
Yep, cats and bees, that make honey. Bees and fish. You just don't want to keep away from that. But see, because there's a lot of things that you can put on dogs. People ask me all the time, can I use it on my dog? I said, well, yeah, you can, but there's so many other better things, easier things to use on it, but for sure not. They have a whole makeup than a dog does, that it would really harm them, their body. They can't process the
Okay. So speaking about the dogs and pets, so how would you protect your pets? Maybe first let's go on dogs.
Well, first of all, I don't have any pets. Especially I don't have any dogs. But a lot of people will give them things that they may actually even chew. Let's say once a month, or once maybe every 3 months. And what happens was when a tick bites them, they they sense that stuff, and a lot of times the tick dies.
Oh,
So it works really well. Sometimes they have collars that they put on their necks to keep ticks off. So there's a lot of different things that people can use for their dogs.
okay. I had this on my dog back in the days. I had this collar for ticks, but it like didn't really work. Maybe it was like a crappy collar. I don't know. Um,
I think the chewable things probably work best, uh, from what I've been told, anyways. Um, but that goes throughout their whole system, So where the collar would be for the neck, and that's where most ticks will get on. They'll get on the front as they're going through in their shoulder, you know what I mean, and around their
mhm.
face. So that could help. But eating the chewables, then it goes through their whole system, their whole body, and when they're bit, then it can react to the ticks.
Let's go back to protecting us humans from ticks. Outside of treating the claws with permethrin or similar products, is there any guidance on how to dress? So for example, I heard like you put your pants inside your socks and stuff like that. Is that something that you would recommend?
Yeah, that's yeah. That I don't normally do that, but I've read that an awful lot. A lot of people do that. That's to keep the ticks from going up your pants. By putting your pants in their socks. Yeah, and sometimes people say wearing light colored clothing, you'd be able to spot a brown tick better on a white pair of pants than you could on a brown pair of pants. Obviously. So clothing like that. If I were to do that, I would I would treat all those clothes anyways. You
Yeah,
know, that's what I do. Uh,
exactly. But then you need to treat your socks and your shoes and all that probably as well.
and it's very important to treat shoes and socks. I mean, shoes especially because people don't realize that. I mean, that if you're walking through the grass, that could be their first place. You know, shoes and pants for sure. Those are the number one ones to definitely treat for sure.
Gotcha. I also, I was making that mistake that, treating like a shoes and socks and pants and gaiters, and like, okay, that's great. And then the next thing I know, I'm kind of crawling on the ground up to a deer. Is like, damn it, I should have treated all my, all the upper, all my fleece and everything else as well. So essentially, if you're a hiker, then you're probably less likely to crawl through the bushes. If you're a hunter, then that's more likely that you're gonna do that. So I guess, like you said, they're only in the low vegetation, right?
Yes, yeah. They're going to be in grass and shrubs and stuff like that. Remember, they're just a small little body. They can't go up very much. And they sit on that. They have 8 legs. Actually, they're born with 6, and then they grow 2 more in their first year.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, so
Oh,
then when they come out of their egg, they're born with 6 legs. And then after they get their first meal, they're molting into the next series. When they come out as a nymph the next spring, they actually have grown 2 more legs. So now
okay. So after molting, they develop another set of legs.
they're really part of the spider. They're part of the arachnid family. They're not insects. So that's what does it. Yeah, most people think that they're insects, but they're not. They're arachnids. They're
Yeah. Eight legs, right? This is what differentiate. Not many people know that's what differentiates like bugs and insects from arachnids. They're different groups, and the number of legs is the one to tell them apart. Listen, Brian, what do you think about those clothes? Like you can buy clothes that are tick repellent clothes. I think that Rhino Skin is the one of those brands, and I'm sure you know other brands. Like, what do you think about those? Is it gimmick or does it work?
no, they could work too. I actually have. If you've ever looked at my website, I have all kinds of different things on my website to give people. There's a
What's your
lot of.
website? Can you give us another URL?
And my website is right here. The Tick Terminator.
All right.
The Tick Terminator.
It's gonna be all over. Obviously, I'm gonna put a link in the show notes so people will know how to follow. But in case someone is listening to that and is like anxious to go get in there, the Tick Terminator and in Google.
There's a real variety of issues that I cover on there. All kinds of different things. And I definitely talk about what you just talked about there. Rhino skin is basically a really tight material that ticks cannot penetrate. So that would keep up too. Is what rhino skin is. That's on my website. I also have clothes on there that you could buy. You could buy regular clothes, like, well, not this shirt there, but like regular clothes that have already been treated with permethrin,
Oh, like you mentioned the military clothes, for example.
and they're supposedly supposed to last for like 50 to 70 washings. Maybe the life of the clothes. Uh, I've talked to people because I work a lot with people that work at, let's say, a power company. A lineman that climbs the poles, to get electricity up there. Uh, and they are some of my big customers. And I've talked to them, and they said that some of those clothes last for a couple years, and then they start to wear off, their effectiveness. So they get about 2-3 years out of them, is what I've been told. Uh, I have one a shirt like that that I was given to. I just haven't worn it much. I like to spray it on, then I know for sure what I've done.
That was my question. Like, would you spray the tick protective, like a rhino skin or something? Would you spray that too with permethrin, or would you be comfortable enough to leave it like as is?
You could if you wanted to, because permethrin is so versatile. It goes on any kind of fabric. It doesn't stain anything, and it's one thing nice about it.
Yeah,
So it's
I have
very happy.
I have one other question about permethrin, because you can buy the permethrin that is like ready to go in a little bottle with the sprayer, and you just squirt all over it, and it's like ready to go. But you can also buy a concentrated one that you need to dilute yourself, and so my question is, first of all, does any, because you mentioned there's different types of permethrin, and there's one for cattle and the one for this part of that. Does it matter? Does any type is good, or is it like any specific type that you would recommend for like outdoors people, like people who listening to this podcast, hunters, anglers, hikers? And secondly, when you get the concentrate, what are they? How would you advise to dilute that?
There are a couple different kinds of permethrin out there, and you have the one that's already pre-mixed. So that's you don't have to think about that. You just shake it up and spray it on, and that's good for 6 weeks and 6 washes. Now the other, I'm glad you brought this up. The other permethrin that you're talking about that is a concentrate. It's not designed for clothes.
Oh,
It's designed for cattle, and you've probably seen it for farmers to use. That's a different type than the type that the company I work with is the only one that has a concentrate for clothes, designed for clothes. It's EPA registered. The other ones are. So I tell people, when you're using something, make sure you're using it for the correct purpose.
okay.
You know what I mean? So we happen to have the only one that's very unique, which is I'm very fortunate. I'm there, to work with this company that the only one that's a concentrate designed for clothes.
Gotcha. And so what's gonna happen if you're gonna use the one that is not designed for clothes? Is it not gonna stick to the fabric, or is it not gonna work? Like, what happens?
It'll work to a certain extent, but then it kind of smells a little bit different too. I mean, regular permethrin is odorless.
Hmm.
The permethrin for clothes. Uh, and another thing is that it's not designed for clothes, but it can work to a certain extent, yeah. But I like to use exactly what's designed for the clothes.
And I think that European listeners, they can there is many websites that are called, like, my US address or my US shopping, stuff like that, that gives you like this virtual address in the US, so you can order stuff from shops like yours that you don't sell outside US, but you can sell to this virtual address, and then that company sends it over. I know that I was buying some stuff from the US through these things as well, so so people can do that, and buy that special stuff. um right. Listen, so is there anything that you would like to cover as well that I didn't ask you about?
One of your questions there on permethrin there, I'm trying to think of your second question to that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Oh, the second was like, what are like how to, what is the percentage? How to dilute that concentrate?
why don't I just show you one? How's that?
All right,
Okay.
go for it.
Here's a box of it right here, and this is the way it comes. It comes with a little bottle of concentrate right here,
Mm-hmm.
little cup. This is of course, you dump some in here, okay,
Mm-hmm.
with the cup. You pour this in here, and then you pour it in there like that. All
Yeah.
right.
For people who are only listening to that, you can go to YouTube, to Tommy's Outdoors YouTube channel, and watch this. And other than that, Brian just showing like there is a bottle with a application, like a where like a trigger and a tube, and you put the concentrate into the bottle. Bottle is much larger than the concentrate bottle.
And this is the directions.
Right.
So if you put in 1 cup, it'll last for 3 weeks. 2 cups, it'll last for 6 weeks, and 3 cups, 9 weeks, and then so on like that. This is the dilution direction like you were asking about.
Right. Dilution. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's right.
And this is permethrin based solution. What you're showing us now.
Oh yeah, this is the concentrate. This is the only concentrate in the country that's designed for clothes.
All right, that's important because people can look up on YouTube and they see these bottles like with the 2 cups bottle, like a concentrate permethrin, where there's like a big bottle and 2 cups, and this is the one that you say this is for cattle. This is not for.
Right. The one you're describing is for cattle, because you look at a picture on there, and that's what it's got a picture of a farm on there.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the one. So this is I'm actually glad we touched on this because this is the one when you look on YouTube, and even when I was looking at when I was trying to buy on eBay permethrin, there was like all over the place like these containers with 2 cups, and everybody's recommending those, and I said like, well, I'm gonna buy this ready to go. Before I buy this concentrate, and now I'm happy I didn't because now you're telling me, yeah, man, this is for cattle, not for clothes. So that's a good nugget of information that people might not know, maybe mislead.
Here's something to think about also. That the difference. I mean, it'll work, yeah, but I mean, you said you're a hunter, right?
Yeah,
you're a deer hunter.
I am.
When you go out to, I mean, I'm a deer hunter too. And I want to be as odorless as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want to go out there smelling, like perfume. they wouldn't like that. So this is the only one that other concentrate is going to have a smell to it, an odor to it.
Right. Right.
Well, not. When this dries, it's odorless. Regular line for clothes is odorless.
Listen, man. So now we know everything. Like, is there anything else that people can do to protect themselves if they want to enjoy outdoors? I appreciate you said like stay at home, don't go out. but any other precautions? Provided you're gonna be in a tick infested area. You treat your clothes, you put your pants into your socks, and you treat your boots, and you're wearing gaiters and all that stuff. Is there anything else, or maybe maybe different scenario? You go in somewhere and you didn't expect it to go there, and there you go in your sandals and your freaking short pants. Like, what is there anything you can do to at least minimize risk to yourself?
Well, other repellents, I mean, let's say, obviously we've already talked about permethrin being the best. Some people use daily applications. Let's say they may use essential oils. That's on my website. Because on my website, I'm giving people all kinds of different options here.
Yeah, and I thoroughly recommend that website because when I was looking your when we were talking about making that podcast, I went to your website, and you have all sorts of videos embedded in there and information and all that. It's really like a rabbit hole. You can go in there and learn a lot from. So yeah,
DEET and different insect repellents will help keep ticks off. Like and essential oils. But also, you're talking about, let's say, when you're out someplace, and let's say you did not treat your clothes, okay? And here, when you come home, then what do you do with those clothes? Listen to this. What you want to do with those clothes, you get in the house, you take them off, and you put them in your dryer on high for about 15 minutes. Not wash them first. You dry them first. That high heat for about 10, 15 minutes will kill any ticks that happen beyond there.
Wow.
If you put them in a washer first, they'll survive that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
But
damn it.
Oh, I mean, but the hot heat of a dryer will kill them.
Wow.
They can't stay in moisture. They need a little bit of coolness.
I didn't realize that they will survive a washer.
Yeah.
Man. There's also another thing that I heard, that when you and I'm kind of throwing out what I heard, and I'm curious whether you agree with that, or whether this is just a myth, that when you're going back from, let's say, hunting or hiking, and you get in the car in the clothes that you have on you, those ticks may just drop off from your clothes into a footwell in a car, under a seat, and so on. And the next thing happened, your wife or your girlfriend or your son or your daughter gets in the car the next day, and then they get tick that way. Is that possible? Is that something that can happen?
That is possible. Yeah. I have heard of some people spraying their their cars. Let's say if you have cloth seats, especially, you could spray those. I mean, if you're going to be in those areas on a fairly regular basis. But yeah, tick could, even if you have treated clothes, uh, a tick could be on those clothes. Could, and that scenario could work. Where they could get in there, and they may not stay on the seat there, because who knows what, I don't know what ticks do.
Yeah.
Especially there, but they could stay there for a while. But you could spray those seats, with the permethrin on there, and it's not going to hurt anything. That's for sure. It's great stuff. Doesn't bother anything. That could happen.
Wow, I didn't realize that they're so tough to kill. So what kills them is heat, essentially.
Yeah, that can kill them. Yep, heat of the dryer will. I mean, you could put them in. Let's say if you pick them off, if you're not going to save them, you could. Some people put them in a microwave.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
My mom and dad used to do that. They had that they would pick them off the dog. They put them in a little styrofoam cup,
Uh-huh.
and then put them in the microwave, and they would kill them that way. Because they pick them off the dog, and one day they got 163 ticks off the dog in one day.
Are you kidding me?
No, that was their record. 163 ticks.
Wow. Were they big?
No, they're just regular sized ticks, but the dog in the woods, as they're hiking, and they happen to go through, some areas are more tick infested than others,
Mm-hmm.
and the lane or the road and the woods where they were going through, I call it Wood Tick Alley now, because there's so many ticks there.
Wow.
Sometimes when I'm looking for ticks, so I can do experiments with them,
Mm-hmm.
I'll go through that area there,
Wow.
and pick some, just so I can take them home and do experiments with them.
Yeah. What experiments you're doing with ticks?
Well, I want to see how they react to things. I have literally bought ticks in the dead of winter, like say in February. I can buy them from a university in one of the states here in Oklahoma State University. They have a tick research center, and it cost me about $35 to get about a dozen ticks. Most of it was from shipping costs, but who buys other than the Tick Terminator? You got to be a little crazy.
No, Brian, you're really deep into that. You're buying ticks in the winter to experiment on them. No, but that's a proper thing. That's a proper thing, because then at least right? That's your business. So you need to know how they react. Like, have you learned anything interesting from those experiments?
I've learned that it's really tough to figure them out. That's for sure. Really tough. They when I used to do experiments in the basement with my grandkids, Several years ago, I would put them on a white carpet, where I could see them. They weren't going to get away from me. And that was in the beginning days of me learning about what I know now. I know a lot more now. I've spent hundreds of hours research, but it was tough to figure out what they learned or what they would do. I was trying all kinds of
Yeah.
different
Did
things.
you ever put a tick on yourself and like purposely let it bury and bite you? Or you never gone that far?
But what I've never done that. But I did have one buried in my back right here, on my shoulder, a number of years ago, and I thought it was a sliver, because I was underneath the house and I thought I'd gotten a sliver from a floor joist,
Right.
And I asked my wife, I said, "Honey, could you pick out this sliver back here? Go get a needle." And she says, "No, there's legs coming out of it, honey. It's a tick." So, I mean, it was buried in there where they normally don't do that. But this one, I eventually went and showed my mom and dad because they'd never seen one like that before. And I eventually went to a doctor to get it out the proper way, and he used a tweezers, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So we did different things, like fingernail polish or Vaseline or a match or different things like that don't work.
Hmm.
And he used the tweezers, and he had to kind of dig in there a little bit because it was really in there
Wow.
and pull it out that way.
Right. Right. So listen, Brian. Let's summarize for people who want to protect themselves as much as they can. First and foremost, treat your clothes. Right, that's the first thing. Get a good quality product that is meant for this stuff. Treat your clothes. Dress properly. That's one other thing I may ask you. Like a short sleeve t-shirts, short pants, all that stuff. That's a no.
You're more apt to get them there. You're more apt to get them on your skin. A lot of people recommend, if you're going in tick area, to wear a long sleeve, long pants.
Right. Can you treat the skin in any cattle permethrin or anything like that?
Oh, no.
No.
Permethrin does not work on skin because your natural oils just dissipate it and it's useless after about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
So it's only good it's not good for skin. Somebody may break out a little bit. It's not going to hurt them. But there's never been any bad, reactions, where people go to the hospital. Nothing ever like that. But it's not work on skin. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, actually, yeah. That's what I was thinking. That sometimes asking stupid questions is not that stupid, because surely there's someone who will try to do that.
Oh yeah, I talk about that too. So yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So wear properly, treat your clothes. That's the first thing. There's really no way to, like you mentioned on top of the show, stay to the footpath and don't go through the bushes. But I also understand that some of the outdoorsy people, they actually looking for getting into the bushes, which so that advice wouldn't work for them. And then if you're, despite all these things, so maybe before I get to the point where like you finally you have one buried, but before we get there, do the checks, right? That's the next thing once you come back.
Daily tick checks, absolutely, yeah.
Gotcha. Yep. And is there a like a good way that you could recommend that you can do that yourself if you're like in a tent or something, or is it like no good way of doing it and you need the buddy or somebody?
I heard of somebody using their phone and taking like a little video of their phone. I mean, so that's just when they're stripped down to nothing, then they can delete it, but they put that all over places where you can't really see, but you can take a video with your phone. I thought that was a pretty good idea.
Oh, that's actually a very good idea. That's a very good idea. And then you see, okay, and then if you don't have it, that's fine. You're good to go. And if you find one, then obviously number one, remove it. But
Yep.
what
Be gentle when you remove it. Yeah.
Be gentle, get the tweezers, remove it. But then what? Like if you remove that like what would you do? Would you wait and see, or would you just go straight away and get yourself on antibiotics, or what course of action then would you take?
I would watch that bite area and see how it reacts. I mean, not every tick is going to be a problem. All right. If it has a bad reaction, And if you start feeling bad within another couple days, that's when you should definitely go. Because you may have a tick on you, take it off, and no problem at all. They're not everyone is a problem. So just watch it and make sure nothing happens. If anything happens that's questionable at all, go and see a doctor, and hopefully they'll give you some antibiotics. I mean, like I said, bullseye rash is in part of them, not all of them. If it reacts really bad, if you start feeling flu-like symptoms, achy joints, blurry vision, brain fog, different bad reactions like that, where you had nothing else but this tick bite that could have caused that, that's when you should see somebody.
Gotcha. And you're saying it's about 3-4 days after the bite. This is what.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, you don't want to wait 3-4 months. I mean, just days later. Yeah, because the longer you go without, and if it's a problem, I mean, they don't get better on their own.
Right. That's an important thing. All right, Brian, listen, are there any final words of wisdom you would like to leave our listeners? Words of wisdom from the Tick Terminator.
Looking at the website for more information. A real variety. I talked about a lot of stuff on here, but there's probably a few more things in there too, as a reminder, because
Gotcha. Are you also on social media, or is it only a website?
I don't do much. I have a little bit on Facebook.
Okay. And it's also Tick Terminator on Facebook.
Yep. The Tick Terminator.
The Terminator.
You'll see my logo is a tick in the shape of a hand grenade.
Yeah. It's awesome. I actually like that.
That's because there's a war out there. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I tell anybody, any good war general needs to know their enemy. That's why I teach people about the enemy. So this is a tick in the shape of a hand grenade.
This is lovely. I like that logo. I like that logo. Are you selling those T-shirts on your website as well?
No, I don't. I mean, maybe I should.
You should, man. I should. I made the T-shirts with the logo of my podcast as well. I made one just to wear, like you wearing one, and then I put it on social media, and people start coming back to me. It's like, hey, where can I get the T-shirts? And I was like, oh, maybe I should. So definitely you should. People would get it, and then it's.
We in our area here, every year we have like a little a festival. Like some bands come and play, towards the end of the summer. And it's actually called the Wood Tick Festival.
Whoa!
I don't know if you ever heard, there was another festival in the United States here years ago. It's called Woodstock.
Yeah.
You heard of Woodstock?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. Anyways, so they couldn't call it Woodstock, so they called it Wood Tick. So actually I had one of the guys in one of the bands. He bought the shirt practically off my back.
Uh-huh.
He's like, I wear that shirt at the Wood Tick Festival because it's perfect for it,
Perfect. So perfect.
That was a little sideline.
Listen, Brian, like one more thing before we wrap this show up. One more thing that I want to ask you about. It's like a little son of a bitch tick called Lone Star tick, which just scares me. Can you tell our listeners about it? Because I think that not many people know about this bugger.
Now, how did you hear about the Lone Star tick? You have them there too?
No, we don't. Absolutely not. But I did heard about it, and I'm glad we don't have them.
Yeah, the Lone Star tick can actually give a disease called alpha-gal syndrome. Is that what you're referring to?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get that, and you're allergic to red meat pretty much for the rest of your life from the Lone Star tick. It has a little white dot on its back, and that's pretty nasty. I mean, think about never eating red meat again.
Man, can you eat like a chicken and duck? You can.
I don't have the stuff. I don't have the disease, so I can't say for sure. But they have bad reactions, and the way people find out about that is they got bit by a tick, and then all of a sudden they're eating some red meat, and they start having an allergic reaction. Sometimes they go into anaphylactic shock even too, and they don't even know what caused this, And so after a while it goes away, and then a couple weeks later they eat red meat again, and they go, oh gosh, maybe that's it, So it's a hard thing to detect, but yeah, that's the Lone Star tick is the one that's famous for that.
Wow. And is it like for people who, might travel to the United States? Like is it present everywhere in the United States, or is it like more like a, Texas kind of area? Because Lone Star, I don't know, I kind of like making that connection.
I mean that disease, the alpha gal syndrome disease, is more located in the southeastern part of the United States, where there's Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, that kind of area right there. We have it in Michigan and New England area and up the northern states. It's more in the southeastern part of the United States.
Gotcha.
I would think.
Gotcha. But I'm guessing that all the standard treatment that we already discussed, permethrin, cloves, and all that will also deal with Lone Star ticks. They're the same in that case. In that,
Sometimes they use a different antibiotic, but the doxycycline is pretty much the most popular one. Uh, and
yeah, yeah. But you mean you're talking about treatment? But I mean, like in terms of prevention. So like permethrin and all the cloves, like rhino skin, all that. It's all the same.
Ticks are ticks, yeah. As far as hard body ticks like that go.
Right, right. Wow, man, Brian, this was very, very informative and very, very interesting. And I hope that first of all, my US listeners will have a great value from that, and I'm sure that my European listeners will have a lot of value from that podcast as well. And like I said, it's not easy to buy permethrin in Ireland, at least. I had to resort from eBay and stuff like that. But now they know the Tick Terminator, and if they making shopping in the US, they can equally shop your shop and get the stuff shipped to Europe if they wish so. So anyway, Brian, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. I had a blast. I appreciate it.